In the early hours of September 22, 2023, a 22-year-old mother who worked at the Divas Bikini Sports Bar was tricked by a mysterious man whom she thought she was supposed to be engaged in a one-night pleasure business with. DeAndrea was expected to testify as a witness in a capital murder trial, just 2 days before she accepted to meet a man for pleasure. To fully understand this story, we need to get back to how it all started. DeAndrea Ford was born on October 24, 2001, and while many details about her parents weren't widespread, her uncle and her grandmother were her only family members with internet recognition. Her grandmother's name was Bridget Carriere. Her life was very eventful owing to the fact that she was a very social person, and many notable events happened to her, but amongst all, one event happened to stand out. At just 16, DeAndrea found out she was pregnant. It was tough news for someone her age with big dreams. So she moved in with her grandmother and turned what some called an unexpected pregnancy into her strength. After welcoming the baby, DeAndrea, who was more than determined to provide for her son, worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. Her family and friends weren't surprised. She was always someone they could count on. But DeAndrea had a side of her that wasn't so pleasing to the ears. DeAndrea was a woman who earned most of her living from meeting men and giving them pleasure for money. So it was no surprise when she got pregnant randomly. But with her new baby came great responsibility, a fact that DeAndrea was well aware of, which prompted her to make her next big move. She decided to widen her scope and look for another job, and luckily, she got a job at the Divas Bikini Sports Bar. Being one with experience of the nature of the job being handled, which included pleasuring men for business but on a higher level, it was no surprise that she got a pick immediately. However, her nature of job wasn't a yardstick for bad work ethic or misbehavior on her part. She was one who loves to be on the right side of everyone. Due to her work ethic and diligence, the love and attention she got on the outside world was quickly replicated at the bar. Both owners, staff, and customers alike could not help getting fond of DeAndrea, who was both hardworking and very useful. But as lovable as DeAndrea seemed, not everyone was a fan. Just before 1 a.m. on September 22, 2023, 2 weeks after DeAndrea began her job at Divas Bikini Sports Bar, she was wrapping up her shift when a man entered. He looked ordinary, dressed casually, keeping to himself, but there was something unsettling about him. He struck up a quiet conversation with DeAndrea, their body language hinting at a familiarity that didn't quite make sense. Although DeAndrea was quite friendly with customers, it was obvious from her smile that she was being flattered and convinced about something. The pair were allegedly making a bargain about the possibility of having a pleasure-filled night together. Then, without warning, the man gestured toward the door. DeAndrea hesitated for a moment before nodding for yes, and this is where things started to get suspicious. Before this, DeAndrea and her friend always went home together, but with this deal in place, that wouldn't happen this time. So DeAndrea sent a quick message to her friend, saying she had found another way home. So DeAndrea and the man left the club, which would later be seen in the CCTV footage. She got into a white GMC Savannah van with the stranger, but what happened next was strange. The van didn't drive off right away. It stayed parked with the headlights off for nearly an hour. Whether DeAndrea was having second thoughts or the man was trying to convince her of something wasn't clear. But one thing was certain, the whole encounter was suspicious, and it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. After that long, mysterious wait, the van's headlights finally turned on. It pulled away from the club, taking DeAndrea into the night, but as it drove off, a New Jersey license plate was captured on the camera around the club. As news of DeAndrea's disappearance spread, the Houston community was in shock and fear. How could a young mother simply vanish after leaving work? Earlier on, DeAndrea had planned to visit her grandmother's house, so the fact that DeAndrea never made it home to her grandmother's house as planned made the reality more glaring.
The woman has now been missing, and her family is asking for your help to hopefully find her. She was last seen getting into a van in front of a bar where she worked with an unidentified customer. Fox 26's Sherman DeSell is joining us live here from East Houston. And Sherman, you spoke to her family. What did they have to say?
Yeah, good evening, Anthony. DeAndrea Ford, she was working at the Divas Sports Bar and Grill, Bikini Sports Bar and Grill, as a dancer for only a few weeks. The family says that the last time they heard from her was right before this happened, this September 21st, around 1 a.m. And she was seen on a video camera outside of the business getting into a van with someone who was in there just a few minutes before. So here's what we know so far. Around 1 a.m. that night, the surveillance video shows what the family members saw. They said that around 1 a.m., the girl got in the passenger seat of a white van outside the bar with the customer. They sit there for a little over an hour. The van then drives off, and her uncle says before she got in the van with the customer, that same customer was seen talking to another female staff member inside the bar for a little while, about 20 minutes. They seem to be familiar with each other. No suspects have been identified by police. DeAndrea is also the mother of a 4-year-old boy, making this even more difficult for the family.
The following days were filled with frantic phone calls and desperate searches. Her family reached out to friends, co-workers, and anyone who might have seen her, but no one had answers. By Monday, September 25, 3 days after she was last seen, her family couldn't wait any longer. They reported her missing to the Houston Police Department, who immediately launched an investigation, realizing she could be in danger. As word spread, the community rallied behind DeAndrea's family. Search parties were organized and flyers with her picture were posted all over East Houston. Even strangers joined the search, combing through neighborhoods, parks, and abandoned buildings for any clue. The staff at Diva's Bar and Grill were in shock. They had seen DeAndrea leave with the mystery man, assuming she was just getting a ride home. The identity of the man DeAndrea left with, his connection to New Jersey, and where he had taken her were unanswered questions that left everyone searching for the truth. As days turned into weeks, the initial shock gave way to determination.
Tonight marks 2 weeks since missing Houston woman DeAndrea Ford was last seen leaving work. It's a story you saw first here on KHOU 11 News. We spoke to Ford's family tonight, and they told us they had no idea she was a witness in a capital murder case. Court documents show Ford was present when a man was shot and killed in May while she rode in a car with that victim. Ford's family first came to us about her disappearance after she was last seen leaving the bikini bar where she worked. At the time, they feared she'd been kidnapped, but tonight they have no idea what may have actually happened to her. If you know anything about her disappearance and whereabouts, call Houston Police.
Her uncle, Kevin Carrier, took the lead in the family's search for answers. He spoke out about the case, reaching out for help and expressing frustration over what he saw as a lack of urgency from authorities and the media.
And I do believe nowadays it's sad to say, but your complexion brings about the attention that you get, whether it's good or bad circumstances nowadays. I hate to say it, black and brown men and women, you know, we don't get our fair share of what we need. We don't get the same resources that the others get.
The community's concern grew as the investigation stalled, and many demanded answers. Investigators understood the urgency of the case and worked to uncover what had happened. Knowing the first 48 hours were crucial in missing persons cases, they interviewed witnesses and reviewed security footage from nearby businesses. They focused on the white van she had entered, searching for any clues about its driver and its destination. As time passed, the search for DeAndrea seemed to slow down. Days turned into weeks with no answers. But then, on November 1st, a sudden breakthrough changed everything. Police from another state contacted Houston investigators with shocking news. They had found a van that matched the description of the one DeAndrea had entered that night. Hoping for answers, detectives rushed to examine the vehicle. What they found inside sent chills through them. DNA evidence and multiple cell phones. But still, there were no signs of DeAndrea or the mysterious man. However, officers managed to collect fingerprints from the car, which were later entered into the database to identify the unknown man. Yoland Washington, a 51-year-old man with a dark past, was identified as the person last seen with DeAndrea on the night she disappeared. His history was filled with violent acts against women, and now it seemed that pattern had led to another tragedy. He was immediately invited in by the investigators. At first glance, Washington appeared ordinary, but beneath his quiet demeanor was something far more sinister. His interactions with DeAndrea seemed harmless, but they hid a dangerous intent. Detectives questioned Yolande Washington for hours, hoping he would slip up and reveal where DeAndrea was. But Washington had a story ready. He spoke calmly, giving answers that, on the surface, seemed to satisfy investigators. Despite the evidence found in his van, they made the shocking decision to let him go. The choice to release him left DeAndrea's family and the community in disbelief. Many couldn't understand how someone with clear ties to the case was allowed to walk free. The police remained silent on their reasoning, leaving more questions than answers, but promised that the search was still going on and DeAndrea would be found. As the search for DeAndrea continued, investigators turned to her family for help. They requested DNA samples to compare with what was found in the van.
At the end of the day, the one thing that I know to be the truth is that when my little niece is ready to leave from anywhere, if someone's not there to pick her up or get her, sometimes for a lack of better judgment, she'll accept a ride from people. I mean, she's never had a problem with that in the past, and I've spoken with her about that in the past, but I just don't want people to get it construed or twist anything. You know, that all spiraled from text messages from that she sent out saying that she was ready to be picked up to go home, you know, and for whatever reason, she elected to find another way home.
Carrier says police in another state detained the suspect and he was released. He also shared that police found the van and 2 phones inside. And now detectives want DNA from Ford's 4-year-old son.
Days later, the test results confirmed what many had feared. DeAndrea had been inside that van. Even more disturbing, her DNA was found mixed with Washington's in bloodstains on a shirt he wore the night she disappeared. With this new evidence, the police acted quickly. On a cold November morning, they arrived at Washington's home. This time, there would be no escape. Washington was arrested and charged with DeAndrea's murder.
Just at full disclosure, we were told by HPD that the guy, the person of interest, suspect, was detained out of town.
The person, this man, Yolande Washington. He was arrested in Dallas for a different case, but later charged in Fort after investigators said they had evidence connecting him to her death. Court records show investigators saw surveillance video of the two getting into Washington's white van, but he was the only one seen leaving the vehicle. Dallas police tell KPRC2, quote, "This is being investigated as an unexplained death and the investigation is ongoing." However, Houston police tell me they're leading the investigation and waiting for Washington's extradition back to Houston.
The community felt a brief sense of relief knowing the man responsible was finally behind bars. Yet for DeAndrea's family, there was no closure.
I haven't said anything to him, but eventually, if it keeps on and we don't get no word, I'm gonna have to end up telling them.
Her body had not been found. Investigators knew proving murder without a body would be difficult, but they were determined. As they dug deeper into Washington's past, a darker truth began to emerge. DeAndrea's disappearance took a chilling turn when investigators uncovered that she wasn't just a random victim. She was a key witness in an upcoming capital murder trial in court just 2 days after she went missing. But how was she considered a witness? So, DeAndrea was a person who made her money at night. On one of those business nights for DeAndrea, May 18, 2023, around 4:25 a.m., Houston police responded to a shooting at an apartment complex on 5901 Selinsky Road in Southeast Houston. But before I tell you what happened, let me introduce this guy, 35-year-old Otis Parker Jr. Parker was a manager to DeAndrea and a few more women that did similar jobs as her. Allegedly, Parker used to find them high-paying clients for pleasure, and so, this was one of the nights this business was going on. Now, Houston police arrived at the scene and found 35-year-old Otis Parker Jr. unresponsive in the driver's seat of a crashed vehicle. Inside the same car, a passenger was discovered unharmed, but sadly, paramedics pronounced Parker dead at the scene from at least one gunshot wound, and court records showed the murder was part of a planned robbery to steal at least $1,500 from Parker after a completed deal with the girl. So, investigators later identified 4 suspects: 21-year-old Jarrell Tavon Wheeler, Jamal Ray Brown, and Quidiana Renee Taylor, along with 23-year-old Mariah Corinthian Green. All were charged with capital murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon on June 27, 2023. You might be wondering how DeAndrea is connected to this. On the day of the shooting, the young woman in the passenger seat who survived unharmed was DeAndrea Ford. What actually happened was that Quidiana and DeAndrea were returning from a trip where they usually went to give pleasure to men. Otis Parker provided for money when they were intercepted. And while this encounter seemed to have a heroic ending, it was more complicated than it seemed. And unknown to DeAndrea, this encounter would come back to haunt her in a way she never saw coming. With that in mind, investigators believed her disappearance was no coincidence. Someone had a reason to keep her silent, whether temporarily or permanently. The connection to Parker's murder raised troubling questions. Court documents revealed that DeAndrea had been in possession of $1,500 from a trip to Louisiana with another dancer, money that allegedly played a role in the initial crime. Angry text messages from one of the suspects made it clear that Ford was in danger, stating outright that she wasn't safe in Houston. But there were complications. The suspects in Parker's murder had already been arrested, leaving many to wonder if eliminating DeAndrea was still necessary. Could her disappearance have been part of a broader scheme to silence her permanently? Or was something else at play? Inside the courtroom, tensions ran high. The prosecution laid out their case, detailing the bloodstains, the surveillance footage, and Washington's movements in the days following her disappearance. The defense, however, argued that without a body, there was still room for doubt. The case is still ongoing as of now.
In the past few weeks, the case of DeAndrea Ford has been discussed a lot right here in our newsroom. KPRC2 reporter Rochelle Turner has been following that story. Rochelle, so this is something that we discuss in our editorial meetings. We discuss how we're going to report on these things, but you're here to give more details on maybe why this case isn't getting all of the attention that you think it should.
Yes, and I'm so happy to be here on The Plus with you, Haley.
Thank you.
Morning.
Yeah.
So yes, DeAndrea Ford has been missing since September 21st, and her family is very upset and aggravated and angry about how her story is being told in the media. There are reports of DeAndrea talking about her past, about something that happened, and her family believes that doesn't have anything to do with her disappearance. So I spoke with her uncle, and he was very upfront. He wants to be transparent about her disappearance, and he said her being a witness in a capital murder case does not have anything to do with the fact that she is missing. And he believes that tidbit of information is what's stopping Houston police and other agencies from really just trying to figure out exactly where she is. He's revealed that detectives found the van that she supposedly got into the car, or she got into the van with a man. They found that in another state. They found cell phones, and they asked her family for DNA evidence. So her family is asking Houston police, why are you not reporting any of that information out there? But we spoke to her uncle, and I want to show you what he had to say.
At the end of the day, we want DeAndrea back. We want answers. We want any of the two.
For DeAndrea's family, no legal outcome could replace what they had lost. Her grandmother spoke of the unbearable uncertainty, pleading for anyone with information to come forward. Meanwhile, volunteers continued their search, combing through wooded areas and abandoned lots in hopes of bringing her home. Her son, too young to understand, still asked when his mother was coming back. And while the family was left to deal with the heartbreak of losing DeAndrea, they still hoped they could at least give her a befitting burial. Their wishes soon came through. DeAndrea Ford's remains were later found in a Dallas culvert on March 15, 2024. But it took until September 17, a period of 4 months, for DNA testing to confirm her identity.
It's an outcome family members of DeAndrea Ford didn't want to see. Her remains identified in Dallas nearly a year after she disappeared from this bar and grill in East Houston.
She was just trying to survive and care for her child, but danger isn't always obvious, especially when it comes from someone who seems ordinary. If she had known she was a target due to the murder trial, she might have taken extra precautions, staying in public, sharing her location, or even relocating. But the truth is, the responsibility wasn't hers. It was on those who chose to harm her. Do you think law enforcement or the courts should have done more to protect her as a witness? What would you have done differently to keep your life if you were in her position? Let me know what you think in the comments section below.